We'll wait for a couple of minutes. Welcome, Raja. Welcome, Pranav. How are you guys today?
Good, Shivesh. How are you?
Good, Raja.
All good, Shivish. Thanks for asking.
Right. So we'll wait for a couple of minutes just to see that we have all the attendees pitching in and our administration has put them in. So, right. So, first of all, let me welcome everyone who has joined here live for our much anticipated webinar on data governance. I am very excited to explore this foundational series, which we are starting with our first episode on plan and prepare. I have been joined with a couple of very dashing and handsome gentlemen. Also, some of my ex-colleague, Mr. Raja from US and Mr. Pranav, who is from Middle East region and heads that region. So, thank you all for joining us. So, I hope people have joined in and are settling in. Uh, so, let's begin. So, Raja, I would like to have a brief introduction you can give to audiences about yourself.
Sure, Shivesh. Thanks. Do you all hear me okay, right?
Right, right.
So
Yeah.
I'm Raja Narayan Swami. I'm very passionate about enterprise data governance, enterprise data strategy. Work with more than a few hundred customers in the last couple of decades, from Fortune 500 companies to down small business scale, regardless of the size. My passion is always about the data, bringing data into life. It's an action. It is the asset of any organization. So in July of this year, I followed my heart, started my own firm called Architect Solutions, focusing same thing, data as an asset. Making sure customer is happy about their own data, making sure they take actionable insights based on their own data. So basically, working with them tirelessly in terms of understanding their data, making sure their data is their asset. That's my passion. Thanks, Sivesh.
Great, Raja. Great to hear about you. Pranav, a very known name, would like to you also to introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure, Shivish. So, hello everyone. I'm Pranav. I have been in data landscape from last 18 years. Started my career along with Informatica, and most recently I have joined Data Infra from last 5 months. I'm heading the region here for Middle East here, and prior to Data Infra, I was part of Informatica professional services team. So my passion lies around data a lot in terms of data governance, data integration, application integration side, and master data management side. And pretty excited about today's session, right? So the data governance, right? So let's start and let's start talking about the the content here.
No, great. One thing which unites each one of us here is data, right? So that's a wonderful, wonderful thing, and that's where industry is really going forward. And I am seeing the next wave, or I can see still the wave is going through. So when you have chunks of data, one very important topic for every organization remains on governance, right? Until you do not govern your data, you are so let's kickstart. Since we have good number of people also joined in live, I welcome every one of on who have joined little late. We just did a brief introduction and we will just dive in deep now. So let's start with the very first topic. Let's start on the planning phase, because we are going to do this in a series, but with this episode we will focus on the planning and prepare. So we want this particular web series to be very exhaustive and giving the details of each phases and the fundamentals of data governance going in, which can help our customers, our partners, uh, and the people who are joining us live. So let's start with planning phase. So Raja, if you could walk us on the key elements involved in this stage. You feel free to pick the industries, right? So you have been a veteran in this space, so I should not point out on industries you should speak. So yeah, go ahead, Raja. Raja, we can't hear you. Maybe you're on mute.
Do you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Thank you, Shivesh.
Yes.
So, as you rightly pointed, right, data governance is an exhaustive phase. But from the IT consulting firm perspective, what we usually do is we split it into 8 smaller dimensions. The very first thing is the planning phase. Planning phase is the backbone of any data governance program.
Right.
It's all about setting the right foundation. Begins with the customer readiness assessment. So why we need to do the customer readiness assessment is to understand their customers portfolio, customers infrastructure, and customers eligibility in terms of stepping into the data governance program, because it really helps to understand the business, helps to understand the organization, the customer's internal organization, how the data is being aligned, making sure that initiative they are taking it, and when we are stepping it, this evaluation is a critical element to understand the maturity of their process in terms of the data governance. Take an example, finance industry, right? The finance industry, we heavily focusing on the compliance and security perspective, because the both they are pillars, in my opinion. Compliance and security, they are the paramount of importance of any financial industry.
Right.
In all industries, in all vertical, these two factors plays a bigger role, but particularly on finance industry, they are paramount of importance, because during the readiness assessment, what we do is we examine the organization, how they handle their sensitive information about their customer, about their financial data, because we want to put together to have a holistic picture about the customer's information, transaction histories, all these steps. Right. The next step is to define the pilot case. Once we understand the assessment, based on the assessment with the customer, then we basically jot down a plan of action in terms of defining a pilot case. The pilot use case is something is a very smaller integral entity of an data governance planning phase, making sure that what is the business requirements and how we can define it, so that immediately at a very short period of time, how we can bring value to the customer by doing this pilot use case. So that's basically my view in terms of specifically on industry, but we can go on for other industries as well.
Right. No, very important thing. Bring value to the customer. That is one thing which I really appreciate. And individuals like us or consultants like us, and the techies like us, that is one thing which should be in our core agenda. Bringing value, right? That is the core driving nature of what we follow as a practice, and we follow it. I know in our organization, in your organization, one thing we really cater to is the value which we give to customers, right? So no, that's great. So I would just want to understand further. Pranav, would you want to add anything over here further to what Raja has added?
Yes, definitely, Srivish. So I would second Raja here, right? So the foundation aspect of a data governance program, right? So that's the most important phase, and that is what we are talking about today. And when we are actually dividing a data governance program, the planning and the preparatory phase is the most important phase. I would rather, uh, give it like at least like the 50% of the overall chunk, if it has to be, right? So and this definitely is important more from the use case perspective, right? So, and as Raja pointed out, in the financial industry, much more focused over the security aspect or the policy governance. And then, if we move into the retail industry, right? So where probably, we see a lot of customers and the transactions, the in-store transactions, and there's a lot of data. And then retail industry, obviously, so would like to track their loyalty programs, their customer
Right.
retention, some of those marketing campaigns and stuff like that. And that is where it is very, very important that a retail industry has a visibility towards the overall data landscape, from where the data is coming in, where it is going, what are my critical elements, the hierarchies of the product information management, right? So which is like a
Right.
must for a retail industry, right? And so what governance brings in this landscape is the overall picture of your data landscape, the quality, so that the business users and the campaign drivers and the any stakeholders in the organization, right, has the data right on their fingertips, right? So the visibility towards the data, the understanding of the data, and who owns what and stuff like that, right? So that is where industry specific use cases and the planning phase becomes much more important, and that in that aspect. And that is what so we should be talking about today, that what are the techniques about it, uh, how it is actually planned, right? So what are the various areas where we focus as we proceed in our discussion today, that that in a planning phase and the preparatory phase, and what are the outcomes of this particular program.
Right. No, great. One thing which came to my mind and strike right away, right? Because I have couple of very veteran leaders here, and one thing which separates us here is the geographic you are in, right? Raja comes from a very mature market, which tech as very standard, but Pranav, you are from a very evolving market, right? Which is now evolving in that sense. So does this geographical differences also play a certain part in these governance when you are preparing for the things, right? So how critical it is, the mindset of the customers, the rules of those locals and all those things, right? How important is that? Do you consider, and we should consider those in planning phase? So Raja,
So
we may start with you. Yeah, please.
yeah, I think absolutely, Shivesh, as Pranav pointed, right? Um, so take an example. Most of the multinational companies are global organizations.
Right.
They have customers all across the world. Take an simple example. Manufacturing industries, they have like a huge supply chain management, supplying the SKU, the products for the bigger product across the globe, and they're consistently evaluating the product quality, right? So what they would like to do is they want to ensure the data stores in their, let's say, North American or global organization, before they share the information to the suppliers sitting all across on the other side of the globe, they want to ensure a proper security should be in place. For an example, GDPR is the one of the most critical data privacy policies, and
Absolutely,
everything needs to be
absolutely.
followed. And if you take an example for a healthcare, the healthcare is
Hmm.
something is very serious. The organization like Center of Medicare and Medicaid, and they have like HIPAA policies, right? So the geographical plays a bigger role, because otherwise there is a huge penalty to be imposed on the organization if they don't pay attention to the data they are sharing across the other side of it without having a proper sign off, without having a proper policies in place. So what we do, that's add lots of overhead to the organization to understand what kind of data that we have, meaning the organization they have. And before sharing with the other side of the globe, to other side, let's say an example, Pranav is in MENA, and he wants to see the data for their own customer, even for their own customers and suppliers. He wants to make sure that proper data privacy and policies to be playing an active role in the data governance. So I would add, certainly, to answer your question, geographical sectors, geographical region plays a pivotal role in terms of sharing the data, and it adds lots of responsibility to the organization. By having these two, a data governance framework is so critical in the planning phase before
Right.
we actually take action in sharing the data into other side of the platform.
Wow, that's great insight, Raja. So yeah, Pranav, I would like to come to you also, because you are also from a market which is now ever evolving, right? And we are getting lot of traction from that market, right? So yeah,
Oh
please.
yes, yes. So this geography is all about data governance now. So, but yeah, I mean geographical differentiators, right? So Middle East, right? Considering Middle East, right? So we have Saudi Arabia, which is one of the most growing markets, and the one of the most tracked, suited after data governance use case is the privacy, right? So where
Hmm.
there is the personal data protection law called as PDPL, which is published by the National Data Management Office of Saudi Arabia. Now the policy itself lays down a lot of security aspects in terms of the subject rights and consent management and uh, visibility towards your protected data, your PII data, PCI data, and stuff like that, right? And that is where it becomes one first and foremost and the very important use case within Saudi Arabia, where we are working with multiple customers here, to solve the PDPL privacy law use case on data governance, right? So that is where we are much more focused. One aspect is the democratization of your assets and the discovery of the PII and the sensitive data, but then also solving the use cases around the consent management, around the data
Mm,
subject
right.
access rights and stuff, right? So that becomes very important. So that comes first to my mind. And then secondly, right, so the banking and financial industry in this region, right, so the security aspect is quite important, right? So again, it comes into how are you protecting your data, right? So whether it is role based, protected in terms of anonymization of the data to a certain group of people and stuff like that, right? So that is where role based access control and access governance comes into play. And then overall governance of the sensitive data and the categorization of those elements and the documents within the overall repository of the data landscape within a financial industry, right? So that comes into my mind, which is primarily around the security and the personal data protection law, right? So those comes into my mind if you are specifically talking about the geographical related use
Yeah,
cases.
yeah, yeah. So no, that's very valid point. And markets where you are in currently, I have seen a lot of tractions in India also, where this is really growing up. There are governments who are working on. They are ensuring that that communities or the industries follow all these rules, because data is one asset which everyone or each companies want to have, but they want it to have private, right? So it's becomes very very important for. That's a great insight on the planning phase. So let's quickly move to the preparation phase of the discussion. So we discussed the planning. Now let's move to the prep phase of this. So uh, Plano, can you explain what happens during this stage, and how does this varies across industries? Specifically on, I'm okay if you deep down to certain technical aspects of it also, because there are a lot of tech communities who has joined us and would like to hear that also.
Definitely, Shivish. Right. So moving from the planning phase, right? So the
Mm.
planning is more where you are basically focused on the business drivers or the pain points and the main specific use cases around a particular industry, right? So the overall picture, and then you talk about those some of those aspects and the deliverables around it. But in the planning phase, we are much more focused on the aspects of discovery, right? So what and we actually start with the overall program assessment, right? So that is where we conduct more of a maturity assessment of the current existing data landscape and perform a gap analysis, right? So and then deliver that particular report to the customer saying that, okay, that these are your key data governance program success strategies and the drivers of the data governance, right? So that becomes your program assessment. Moving into defining the overall goals and the expected outcomes, right? So the key performance indicators, somebody is driving profitability, somebody is driving data quality, right? So improvement over the data quality, somebody is tracking the lineage around the data, right? So from where, and the visibility towards it. Some other customers are much more focused towards federation aspect, right? So how the data is
Right.
monetized and federated across your marketplaces so that the business users have right access to the right data at the right point in time, right? So that is where we define the main expected outcomes of a data governance program. And that is then we actually also discuss about the organization model, that who participates in your program, right? So it's the data governance office, who are the personas, who owns what, the complete RACI matrix around it. Moving into much more detailed technical discussions around the use cases selection and prioritization, right? So a very specific use case I would definitely like to talk about is the data products, right? So which is much more towards federation aspect of your data assets, right? So you have
Hmm. Hmm.
very very domain specific close to the business who owns it, right? So the data sets, and now you want to actually operationalize and put it in the marketplace so that that the right users have right access to it, they can actually request the access, they can actually check that who owns the data, from where it is coming, and what is the quality of the data, whether you can trust it or not, right? So it's the overall data mesh and data products use case, right? And that is what we elaborate on, right? So we define
Right.
those use cases and then move on, discussing much more deeper details around
So
what are your core systems.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So just to add, can you also let us know on the classification and glossaries, because I keep hearing these words, right? So I know you have explained it in depth, but on these particular words, right? Classifications, glossaries, because whenever data governance programs runs, right, in some of the phases, you will keep hearing these words, right? So if you can
Yeah.
further elaborate what you have said, I know you have covered some aspect of it, but specific to what is classification and glossaries, which you can tell us around.
Sure, Sivish. So as I was saying, right, so the discussion when it moves from the systems, that what are your systems in scope, and then when we talk about the data domains, right? So let's say if we are
Right.
specifically targeting customer as a data domain, or maybe employee as a data domain, or maybe your credit cards or your loan data
Mm.
as a data domain, right? So
Mm.
we say that that is your data domain, right? And then we actually talk to the business owners and the stewards of that particular subject area, that what are your day-to-day business terminologies, what is your business context around a customer or an employee or HR data or supply chain data and stuff. And that is where we get a picture of that, what is the business, what are the various business aspects which needs to be tracked, which actually results in the glossaries, right? So the glossary
Mm.
is nothing
Okay.
but a business term used in a
Hmm.
day business operations, right? And then once you define the glossaries, which are the business terms, you also define the structure, what are the hierarchies, right? So you actually create the right hierarchy of the glossaries. You have very certain best practices which we so which we are not talking about in this particular session, but that is when so you define the glossaries.
No, no,
And
I think we should talk on the best practices also. So maybe I will take up this very next, but that's a
sure.
very in-depth explanation what you have given. I think our audience will get a lot of benefit around. So Raja, would you also like to add something on what Pranav has been explaining very exhaustively?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think Pranav touched the key elements here, Shivesh. See,
Hmm.
data classification in data governance, right? Let's go a little deeper. It refers
Right.
to the process of organizing and categorizing the data into different levels and groups. He touched the point of groups. Why we need this data classification is to be based on sensitivity, value, and impact it could have if we disclose, altered, or modified or destroyed. So that way, a proper classification, ensures how the data should be handled properly, protecting sensitive information. So what we do when we get into the right completion of the planning phase, while we are defining the pilot use case,
Mm-hmm.
we have a common data classification levels. So the data classification levels, once we do the data, collecting the data, we categorize them into public data, internal data, confidential data, and restricted data. So why we need this categorization is it is the most important piece because it improves the overall security of your data, because how it will defines you what is the sensitivity level to be protected at an appropriate access control, which Pranav was talking about. It
Mm-hmm.
improves the compliance and enhances the compliance. It delivers the value in terms of efficient data management, and overall it minimizes the risk associated with the data classification control if you do it at the very planning phase level.
Okay. That's great. So we have talked almost very in depth around planning and prep phases, right? But let's let's uh, let's move little bit ahead of it, and let's take your or both gentlemen's views on the best practices part, right? Pranav touched a little bit, but I want to further deep dive on it. So, do you think we have best practices based on the sectors and industries also, or it is a general charter of best practices for a data governance program? So, I'd be happy to listen to a particular sectors you are putting in, and just letting our audience and ourselves know around the best practices, which we are like companies like us, right, who really have that charter, helps our customers and the associates around it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can chime in if Pranav, if you
yeah.
want to chime
Please,
in, go
please,
ahead.
Raja.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead,
So
Raja. Go ahead.
the best practice is something is a paramount of importance, Shivesh, because
Mhm.
as a consulting company, right? when we go to the customer, the most important thing is what is the difference in terms of the value proposition that we deliver is the best practice. Because being in the industry for several decades, working with several customers, we have been into the processes of delivering best practices because it is essential to ensure effective management, accessibility, security, quality of data across the organization. Take an example in the manufacturing industry where large volumes of data are generated through supply chains. I have one of my customers, they have like close to 20 different ERP systems, production processes,
Okay.
customer interaction. A strong data governance is critical because it can drive the operational efficiencies, improves their overall decision making process, ensure the regulatory compliance. That is the most important. So how we do it? Establish a clear data ownership and accountability. That is the first step. If we do that, that is the very first beginning. How we do it? We interact with different business units, making sure what we speak in their language. Then, as Pranav was talking about the data classification, right? Then once we establish a clear ownership and accountability, implement data classification. Take an example, a manufacturing company can classify data into categories, such as I already talked about, public data, confidential data, and restricted data. Then one level below, their next level is to define the data quality standards. Then once we
Right.
have the three pillars in place, then it's very easy to implement a very strong data security and access control layer. So that's basically the best practices, but there are a lot of other areas and nuances in terms of the data quality, in terms of centralized data governance framework, in order to how we can handle the organization across multiple region, leverage tools as Pranav was talking about. What is the best tool in the industry? We do basically, if some customer they have multiple tools in the industry, we do comparison metrics, utilize the data governance tool or to automate and manage the overall data governance processes, including metadata management, data lineage, and data cataloging. That's the best practices, I would say, in the data governance program.
Great. No, that's great when you talked around the charter of the adoption guide. Pranav, maybe if you want to chime in on the best practices
Yeah,
also.
so that's just, I will just add to what Raja was mentioning, right? So he touched on the aspects of the classification, he touched the aspects of the data quality, and that is how in the preparatory phase, right? So when we are talking about the best practices, those are the important ones, right? So defining, first I would say, is defining the overall organization model and the operating model, which Raja was talking about, right? So you define that, what are the various identification of the triggers for the changes or the business process and the stakeholders requesting those changes and the documentation of those workflows, right? So who approves what and who implements what, defining the overall RACI chart, right? So once you have figured it out, you are
Correct.
actually talking about the classification aspect. And then, as Raja mentioned, right, so you're talking about the data quality, data discovery aspect. And then, so I would add is more of the business operating model, right? So that is how, so you complete the overall process, right? So of implementing and planning the data governance journey, right?
Yeah, I
Right.
think
Right.
one
No,
other
that's great.
thing.
So I was. Hmm.
One other thing, Shivesh, I think
Go
we
ahead, Raja.
touched about all the areas. The one thing I always willing to convey to my customer is to how we can promote a data driven culture, because fostering a culture
Right.
where data is treated as a valuable asset across their organization, which includes the once we set up the framework and everything, train their employees about the importance of data governance and ensuring data driven based decision making process. So once we
Yes,
establish that, then the
Right.
data governance is an ongoing journey which will empower each business units within the organization to
correct.
drive the value based on the data.
I would
No,
second
that's
that, so
very.
that
Yeah, that
just
absolutely we second. I was just thinking of one thing, right? I have keep hearing, and I heard it in one of the data tour which certain companies were doing. Very insightful thing they were saying that in the current cloud era, right, most of your assets are rented out on cloud, right? Your
right.
databases are rented. your infrastructures are rented, right? But as a company or as an industry, what you own is your data, right? So that is one thing which you really need to do right. That's an absolutely nail on the coffin which you need to put in. So I also now feel that in the current era, I will take you guys view also, that importance of CDO in an organization also have now playing a very pivotal role. What do you think, right? Because organization has evolved and data has come into picture, and these industries have large data. So a separate vertical which having a dedicated CDOs, right, who just goes there, governs on the data part of it, derive the data strategies, involve boutique firms like us, which we are strategically very important, or which plays a very important roles being partners to right tools and right mechanisms. So the role of CDOs in the current era, what do you gentlemen feels around it? Raja, I'd like to go with your view first.
I think you touched the most important topic, Shivesh, in this entire now the entire world, almost 43% of the organizations shifting to the cloud. So the CDOs, the chief data officer, plays a pivotal role in any organization, especially when the data is consistently moving to the cloud. As
Right.
businesses increasingly shift their operation to the cloud environment, there are a lot of responsibilities in terms of evaluating the cloud partner or the provider to ensure that the migration and the management of data aligns with the company's goal in terms of the cross-functional platforms that we are talking about, in terms of compliance standards, security requirements. So some key reasons why CDO is crucial, because the strategic data governance and compliance is the most important factor. Because as I stated earlier, like 43% of the organization data is shifting into the cloud, migrating because of the cost, minimize the
Yes,
OpEx. So the role of a CDO ensures the data governance policies are aligned with the cloud security, privacy
absolutely.
laws like CDPR, GDPR, HIPAA, and CCPA, the internal corporate compliance frameworks. That is the most important thing. So let's say when I'm shifting the data, I want to evaluate whether this iPaaS vendor, whether it's AWS or Oracle, whatever the vendor we are talking about, making sure their infrastructure is aligned with the HIPAA standards. So these are all the most important fees the CDO ensures, because he is dealing with the patient data. Move to the cloud, remain such HIPAA compliant, establish the rule of encryption, access, data sharing, and data security. All these things would be an added responsibility to the CDO.
Right. No, that's what exactly what I was also thinking around. So yeah, Pranav, you have been speaking to a lot of CDOs these days, I know. So how do you feel that this industry, which is getting really mature, should means make a
Yeah.
CDO as
So
their strategic decision? So
see, whenever you talk to the people who are responsible for data, right? So the chief data officers,
right, right.
the primary
Hmm.
challenges which they have, right? So they, in the ever changing landscape, and you touch based about, most of the infrastructure moving to cloud. Some is there on prem, some of the applications are on cloud. You're using CRM which is cloud based, but there is some part of it which is on prem. You have to relate it out, and that poses a lot of data challenges, right? So on integration part, reporting part, visualization part, and so how do you actually, and then you're talking about all these transformational landscapes and the use cases around the artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the next generation AI models and stuff like that, right? So the main challenge is, I need to know where my data is, how it is moving, so where it is moving, from where it is moving. And then I don't know. I mean, something is lying here, something is lying there, and then how can I trust this data set? Let's say if you found a particular report which is, let's say, customer demographics, right? So that is there in a CRM application, that is there in maybe some other application and a database which is managing the customer relationship management, related aspects. Now you get reports, but can you trust it, right? And that is where comes the data quality related challenges. And
Correct.
and when we talk to them, right? So maybe they some of them, right? So they know that that there is a need for a federated and a centralized data governance as a program. But they have the right use cases in their fingertips because they face the most of the challenges addressing to the stakeholders, internal and external, right? So internal to an industry, they have various departments, right? So the HR needs
Right.
some other data, your higher management report needs some other data, your stakeholders from the various departments and the owners of the data have to have access, the provisioning of the access and stuff. And that is where governance as a platform, as a centralized platform, becomes much more important, right? So where you need to
Very well
have
said.
a
Yes.
centralized repository, federated governance, access management, access governance, quality, and then a Google, which is in your fingertips, where you can search it up, and then you can see that whether that particular data can be trusted, and where it is coming from, and who's the owner of it, and how can I request access to it, right? So that is what data governance solves as a problem for a CDO, I would say.
Right. No, that's great. Means
I was sorry for the interruption,
no, no.
Sivesh.
Go ahead, Raja.
So I was expecting Pranav would touch the data democratization process because that
Right.
is that is
Right.
his area of expertise, right? So
Correct.
CDO, basically, one thing I would like to highlight: cost management and optimization,
Hmm.
because people were thinking this is a kind of a myth. To want to make it very clear, the moving to cloud is very cost effective, but my opinion, cloud data storage and management can be expensive if it is not optimized properly, if they don't follow the best practices. The CDO ensures the cloud resources are used efficiently, balancing the cost with performance. So that's one of the critical role of a CDO, and also a data democratization process. The customers invest millions of dollars for the software to handle MDM, data quality, data governance. But what is the purpose of buying these expensive softwares for the data governance framework? Making sure the CDO promotes the data democratization by ensuring that the self-service data analytics tools empower them and empower their employees to easily access the data they need for decision makings. So that way, if a manufacturing company, as I was mentioned, about 20 different ERP systems, each one managed by different business units. So think about if 20 different business units trying to leverage the data that's being governed internally by the IT system, that is a huge value for the organization. That is the most important thing for a CDO, is to promote data democratization process. That is the data innovation, in my opinion. It helps the organization for future proof, future readiness. 10 years down the line, the data is still valued as the data asset. So they will not be planning to consume like 20 years worth of data. They know exactly when the data needs to be archived, what is the purpose of the data currently stored, what is the strategic business value it's going to drive. So that is the most critical, another critical areas that CDO would pay attention to.
Right. No, that's great insight. Means I was just thinking that all enterprises who are taking AI or embarking this AI journey, how important it becomes, right? Specifically for enterprises who are going to speak to your data, right? This particular program or this data strategy for your company is such an important role. So that was great. Means this half an hour of time was excellent. I did not feel how the time, and I always want to speak more whenever I get you two gentlemen together, right? So this has been an incredibly informative session. First of all, I will tell you thanks both of you for this, right? And I will also encourage the attendees to please register to this webinar. If you have not seen it, please see it in the recording. We'll post it all, and we are going to bring the other episode where we will deep down on each of the topic, each of the phases, down by down. We do not want to overburden everyone at one session, right? We will take it slow at pace so that you get deep dive on it. So it's great. We will share the dates very shortly with you, so please sign up. Thank you all.
Thank you, Shivesh.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Pranav.
you.
Thank you all. Yeah, bye.
Bye.
let's tell you the data info story. It all started in the year 2020. Remember the COVID-19 pandemic and the mass layoffs? It was a tough time for many. But like they say, wherever there is a challenge, there is also an opportunity. And that's the story of data info. Like every new venture, our beginning was also small and humble. A 100 square foot office, 3 people, and a simple dream. To help organizations utilize their data assets to the fullest. And this big dream rested on one firm belief: India is more than its metropolitan cities. The next big innovation of the future will come from the towns and villages of this country. The first validation of our belief came early. Within the first week of our operations, one of the largest global IT companies joined us as our first client and partner. And the rest is, as they say, history. Only 3 months after our inception, we inaugurated our new office in the presence of the Member of Parliament Shri Nishikant Dubey and eminent government officials at STPI Devgar. From 3 lone dreamers, we soon became a family of 8. And then gradually, we took this number to 20 in 2022, 40 in 2023. We might have been a new company, but we more than made up for it with our talent, passion, and commitment. As we grew, adding one client after another, our team grew with us, learning, implementing, and evolving with each day. Today, we are more than 80 tightly knit family members sharing the same beliefs and dreams. At Data Info, we greatly value work-life balance because we want to build an environment where each member can thrive and feel empowered. We love what we have built in these last 3 years together, and that's why we are a Great Places to Work certified organization. As more and more talented people joined us in our journey, we began spreading our wings far and wide. Today, we not only have 3 offices in India, Deoghar, Ahmedabad, and Bangalore, but have a strong presence internationally through our offices in Dubai and the US. As certified partners of Informatica, Reltio, Riversand, Snowflake, and many others, we assure our clients of world-class technology implementation and delivery capabilities that's second to none. We are extremely thankful to our esteemed clients for trusting us, and the global fraternity for recognizing our commitment and showering us with numerous awards. Most of all, we are thankful to our community. They have always inspired us to dream bigger and do better. As we celebrate our 3rd anniversary this year, we want to congratulate and thank the entire Data Info team, our clients, and the industry for believing in the India that lives beyond its cities. We promise to continue pushing the envelope through our expertise and innovation as we usher our clients into a new world of possibilities and data-driven digital transformation.